Okay, we'll go ahead and get started here. Hi, everybody. My name is Kelly Wilson. I'm the Director of Donor Engagement for the Wildlife Conservation Network, and I'm really excited to have you all here with us today at the Virtual Expo. First time we've ever done this event, so this is the first time we've ever done these sessions, so we'll be playing with it a little bit and making sure all goes well. So I hope you'll forgive us if there's any little technological glitches, but we'll get there. So there are 3 ways for you to interact in this session. One is to click that participate button or request access button, and we'll give you permission to come up on camera and ask questions verbally of Claudio and Jorgelina. Or you can ask questions in the sessions and we'll pull from there. Or you can just sit back and watch the other questions that people are asking. So a bunch of different ways that people can interact. We'll probably only bring up 2 or 3 people on camera at a time. If you have any loud background noise, unfortunately, I'm going to have to kick you off because I can't mute you. And one last tip, if you double click on Claudio and Jorgelina, you can maximize their video so you see mostly them in the screen and not so necessarily just me. So again, I am excited to welcome Claudio Sillero and Jorgelina Marino from the Ethiopian Wolf Conservation Program. I've been lucky enough to visit Ethiopia and the wolves twice, and I have to tell you, it is an absolutely amazing experience. They are incredible animals, and these 2 wonderful people are working their lives to make sure that the wolves remain. With that, I will hand it over to Claudio and Jorgelina, and they will give you a little update on the program and say hi. We've got a lot of new visitors, a lot of new faces, so maybe just a brief, quick overview of EWCP, and then we'll move into some questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Kelly. It's wonderful to be here today representing, it's just the 2 of us, but we're representing over 60 people working in the program in Ethiopia, all except us, Ethiopian nationals. I hope some of my colleagues will have joined us today. We learn about African wild dogs or painted dogs from David just now, which are relatively well-known lowland species of African carnivore. And now I want to take you to a lesser-known African carnivore, which are the Ethiopian wolves that reign supreme on the roof of Africa, the highlands of Ethiopia. And that's where we've been working. Personally, I've been working in Ethiopia for 32 years, and the program has been in operation for the best part of that. With such a narrow range and being such a specialist species, it requires, it faces particular challenges, and it requires specific actions to be protected. They are found only in 6 small mountain enclaves in the highlands of Ethiopia, and we are present in each and every one of those populations. There are only 500 wolves left, which makes it the rarest canid in the world, the rarest member of the dog family, and also the most threatened African carnivore. The long-term threats are clearly related to the space they live in, because being specialists and living in such small mountains of habitat, they are particularly vulnerable. And Jorgelina will tell you later about what we do to try to deal with those long-term threats. But the most immediate and urgent threats are related to the livestock and the dogs that come with people to graze up in the highlands. And dogs bring disease with them. And that's a rather poignant realization, particularly in the time we all living in, that disease can get transmitted between humans and animals, between domestic animals and wild animals, and so on. And the wolves are particularly susceptible to rabies and canine distemper. So a lot of the work we do involves protecting the wolves from those diseases. So clearly, wildlife conservation cannot take place in a vacuum. All the work we do and our colleagues at WCN involve necessarily the interactions between wildlife and the local communities. And somehow we have to find sustainable ways in which those interactions and that coexistence can continue into the future. So clearly dealing with the livelihoods of the people that shares the land with the wolves is particularly important to us. So on a typical week, our teams on the ground in Ethiopia will be concerned with vaccinating people's dogs by going into the villages, and in the process of protecting the dogs, they're protecting the wolves, and they're protecting people's lives and livelihoods, and using that as an entry point to convey a message for environmental sustainability. But we also work directly with the wolves. We are following them closely to try to understand what they're doing and what their needs are, providing direct protection for them on the ground, and even intervening and vaccinating them. And we've been fortunate in the last few years to be able to have permission to deliver a vaccine in an oral form to protect them from rabies, and we're working also on a canine distemper vaccine to protect them. That's very much the wolf side of the story. But I want Jorgelina to share a little bit about the work we do to deliver sustainability to our work.
Thank you. Yes, I want to start. Thank you, WCN, and for making it this moment possible to connect us with, so many people. Some of them are followers, some of them are friends of EWCP, some of you that maybe don't know about our work. And this is thanks to technology. In this modern world, even though we are suffering this terrible pandemic and we are far away, we can be connected, and the solutions in the modern world can be very diverse. Technology is one of them that enable us to be in contact. And for EWCP, for our program with teams in 5 different regions, is enabling us to get connected. We use technology to collect data as well. But as Claudio said, sometimes the solutions are more down to earth, and sometimes the solutions resides with traditions. And one of the ways we can protect or help protect the habitat of the wolf is to work with the communities and to promote and support traditional ways of uses of the land that do protect the wolves at the same time and to protect the sources of water. Some of the grasslands that work in the mountain grow in the mountain are very valuable. And there are ways of collecting and harvesting, removing the livestock, removing the threat of disease from the system. And we are supporting those, and even now supporting farmers to plant this grass. So they're actually themselves creating and restoring habitat. So sometimes the traditions have the solutions in themselves. Sometimes we need to think a bit out of the box, and some simple innovations make a difference. So one example is fuel-saving stoves. Up in the highlands, there are no trees. People really harvest firewood from the mountains for cooking, for lighting, for heating, and it's a very strong pressure, and it's degrading the environment. Fuel-saving stoves can be produced. We support communities of women that get organized, produce themselves the stoves, sell it locally. So sometimes solutions can be just a little bit, changing something a little bit, and giving opportunities even for women to become business women. So that's the way we approach a problem that is complex. Like all our partners in WCN, we have to think of many different solutions. Education, like Frank Pope introduced in the first presentation, is key. And we do that. We are building a team of Ethiopians that we hope can continue and really protect these mountains. And developing a vaccine, we all are more aware than ever before of the importance that a vaccine can have, the time that it takes to test a vaccine, and maybe to find how to deliver it. And so we're really working very hard. Canine distemper is an emerging disease, very serious. This year killed many Ethiopian wolves in the Valley Mountains. We are really pushing. The trial is coming along. We most likely pretty soon be able to react and vaccinate wolves.
Great.
So thank you for coming, and I hope we can answer your questions.
Yeah. So I'm going to invite Julie and Bobby up. And while we're doing that, there's a question about, is the population increasing at all?
Well, we are asked all the time when the numbers are going up and down. We tend to focus more on, hello, Julie, more on the number of packs of reproductive units, because if we have healthy females supported by the families, and this is very much a matriarchal system where those dominant breeding females are in control. So it's crucial for us to have enough of those packs of families in the landscape, because that will allow them to breed and keep the population going. So we could see numbers might go up and then they would drop the next year and go up again because of an episodic, an outbreak of rabies could kill as many as 75% of a particular population. So we're going to see these peaks and troughs, but our focus is in delivering protection to the packs, to the family packs. And on the other hand, our focus is on enabling protection for the habitat they live in. There is only 2,000 square kilometers of Afro-Alpine habitat left for the wolves, and there's still pressure from farmers that keep encroaching into that space. So delivering that sustainability and helping people's livelihoods to protect that vital habitat will be crucial for those packs to have where to live. And we are looking at ways in which we could help the wolves back into areas where they're no longer present. Very much working on that and very excited about what we could do in the next 10 years to allow wolves back into areas where they once were present.
Great. Thanks, Claudio. Julie, we'll turn it over to you. You had a question?
No.
And I'm going to invite a couple more up. So.
Kelly, I don't actually have a question. I thought everyone had to get in that way. I am having trouble with my interface because I'm just seeing a very sliver of everybody, but I'll work on that later. Okay. I just want to say hello, and I'm sorry we had hopes of visiting you in January, and that seems likely to not happen, but thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you. We should reschedule that trip. Let's talk about it.
Okay.
Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you later. Bringing a couple other people up on stage for questions. Another question from the chat in the meantime. What is the relationship between the wolves and the government?
Would you like to take that?
Yeah, it's not an easy one. Well, the Ethiopian as a country is a country that is very proud of their unique species, and the Ethiopian wolf is one of them, the gelaras and the Volley ibises. So there is the intrinsic value for the governments and for the people on the wolves. However, their capacity to really protect these populations is not necessarily there. This is a huge country with more than 100 million people, with many complications and social and economic complications. So I think in a way EWCP comes to provide what maybe the country could do by itself, but we provide funding, like with generous people, like, you know, all these friends from WCN, and so we work with them directly. They're eager to protect the Ethiopian wolf. We do policy together. There is an Ethiopian wolf conservation plan. So I can say that we work together. Sometimes this relationship is not easy. With the cases of vaccinations, for example, the government sometimes is really reluctant to go ahead, afraid of manipulating the animals, or you know, some typical concerns around vaccines that some even people, humans, have around the world. So I think that is a positive relationship, but I think that the resources and the capacity sometimes is not there, and sometimes the understanding of some procedures like vaccination is not there. I don't know if you would agree with that.
But adding to that, I think it's quite unusual, the situation we have in Ethiopia, where the government has been able to set aside 80% of the land where the wolves live in some form of protection. Those are either national parks or their regional parks or their community protected areas. So while there is a lot to do to improve the delivery of the enforcement and the work on those protected areas, the commitment of the government is quite clear that they are prepared to protect the habitat for the wolves, and not just for the wolves, but for the vital ecosystem services that those mountains provide, with benefits to people farther down the slopes.
I will add to that the political situation is complex, so there are conflicts about the use of the land in the protected areas and communities that really are encroaching. So it's not an easy relationship between the government and the people, maybe, that is living close to the wolves in some cases.
Great, thank you. I've clicked permission, giving permission for a few people to come up, and I'm guessing they're probably giving permission for their audio and video. So if you want to join us up on video and ask a question, you're welcome to do that. Just hit that participate button. Another quick reminder that if you double click on Claudio and Jorgelina, you'll see their picture big and the rest of us small. In the meantime, Bobby's asking, what is the status regarding Volley wolves and the last outbreak?
Well, that shows that a good level of information. The wolves in Volley, unfortunately, which are the better knowns for the world because they have been filmed many times, but also they are reported on quite regularly, have undergone a dreadful double whammy. They experienced a rabies outbreak followed by canine distemper. So the last 2 years have been particularly taxing. We have the rabies situation under control because in the interim we've been able to deliver the oral vaccine, and we are full on with our vaccination campaigns. With canine distemper, instead, we can only do it on an experimental trial basis because the government wants to be reassured that the vaccine works and is safe for the animals. So we have demonstrated that it's safe for the animals. We still haven't got permission to roll it out altogether, but we use our trial in a cunning way so that we can step in and vaccinate as many of those wolves. So the outbreak has come to an end, and we have had a bumper year in terms of reproduction. Many packs have bred, and we're working on the numbers right now, but we have good survival and lots of puppies right across Valley Mountain. So while it might take a couple more years for numbers to build back to the usual 250 to 300 animals we might have in Valley, we are passed through the worst of the disease outbreaks, and numbers are beginning to build up.
Great. Thank you for that. Susan Young, I know, has listened to many of our conservationists talk about growing Africa and infrastructure issues that a lot of conservation programs are dealing with. She's wondering, are there landscape conservation and interaction with community and infrastructure issues that you guys are facing?
You want to talk about the roads?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the mountains of Ethiopia are high, and Ethiopia is like a huge, big mountain. So when I started working in Ethiopia 25 years ago, so to reach the mountains, we really need to drive long hours, ride a mule or a horse, and we will eventually get to the top and put a tent. Nowadays, you have roads reaching everywhere, and this is part of the government plan to interconnect different towns, and building a road through a mountain is easier. So if you go to visit any of the mountain ranges in Ethiopia where the wolves live, there will be a new road that go up and follow a ridge. So we are very aware of the problem of road construction. This can bring problems to the Ethiopian wolves from different angles. I mean, one immediate one is the possibility of road kills, which we are very alert of, and we are setting road signs on the roads because these roads are used by lorries to transport goods. So really, I mean, some of them have quite a lot of traffic. And then it opens up the possibility of people, going farther into the habitat and reaching areas that maybe they were a lot more remote. So it is a problem, and it's a problem that obviously is there everywhere, and it's something that we have to learn to live with. And so far, the things that we can do about that, apart from education to drivers, and also maybe to the people that can use the roads are easy for walk. So people, if they shouldn't bring their dogs with themselves to cross the mountains, because as they are the opportunities for the dogs to meet with the wolves and when disease transmission happen. So in a way, I love nature, I love wilderness, I look at the mountains, and for me, the road is a scar that hurts, actually. But I think for the wolves in particular, there's not necessarily such extreme threat, and it's part of modern world.
Yes, unavoidable.
Unavoidable.
Right. I see we've also got Eric watching. Eric is the program coordinator and living in Ethiopia and working with the team. So,
hi, Eric. Welcome.
Lauren asks, in a matriarchal system such as Ethiopian wolves and painted dogs, how do the populations avoid genetic inbreeding?
That's a very insightful question, and one that prompted my early doctoral studies in the 80s. Clearly, there is potential when you have a setup where no one disperses if they can avoid it. All males will stay put. It's kind of comfortable. You own a large territory with prime state, and there is no real incentive to go anywhere. Females won't go anywhere if they can help it. So you have a situation where males never leave, they have their own hierarchy, and females have a dominant female that once she takes the reproductive spot, won't relinquish for the rest of her lives. And then there might be a daughter or two staying put, and some younger females will get pushed out so that they're forced out to disperse and find new families to live in. But the interesting bit, which I found out through my research, was that when the mating season comes up at the end of the wet season around August, there is a frenzy of activity because the males are very keen to protect and mate with the dominant female, but at the same time, they're keeping tabs on what the females next door are doing. All the females somehow, through chemical cues, synchronize their mating, so they all become receptive at the very same time. And while males are busy going next door looking for alternative females to mate with, the dominant female does the same. And she will go and have a quickie with a wolf next door. When we look at the actual paternity of the pups born to the dominant females, we found that 30% of the matings actually took place elsewhere. And many of the litters have more than one dad. So we have a system where everyone is happy, living in a family life, a very cohesive social structure, but taking care of the potential of inbreeding by having some fun next door.
And I would add to that, Eric, that is listening to us, he something that he's been observing over the past few years in the Valley Mountain population. Because now when we trap animals to vaccinate, we put tags. We can track individuals more than we used to do before. We know a family, but when an animal leaves this family, we are not able to recognize that individual anymore. And we start finding tags in places where we're not expecting, or maybe a female will disappear and appear very far away, like 40 kilometers away. So maybe we underestimated a little bit the role that dispersal may have. Even though it's low, it will help to mix a little bit the genes.
Great. We had a question, I think, that is actually very relevant for now. Unfortunately, this is going to be our last question, and then I'll ask Claudio and Jorgelina to wrap up a little bit. But someone was asking, what are your community's largest challenges at the moment? And do you see your programmatic priorities shifting in the next few months due to COVID?
We've been following the situation in Ethiopia very closely. Unfortunately, the virus doesn't seem to have spread out in Africa as rapidly and as seriously as in Europe and North America. The government is taking very active measures. They have very, very close relationship with WHO, and they're following WHO guidelines. They have declared a state of emergency, which restricts the ability of people to move from one region to the next. So the travel restrictions and the social distancing that is in place is reducing the chances of transmission. Of course, hopefully things won't take a turn for the worse, because what a country like Ethiopia couldn't possibly do is to be run to a standstill. Most people live hand to mouth, and they will require the ability to go out and to purchase the food and to do the jobs and so on. So we are hoping very much that things stay the way they are, with people being respectful of those rules, many people staying at home. For instance, we have suspended our activities that involve interactions with local communities, and we have put restrictions on movement of our staff as well to try to reduce those chances. But what's going to happen and how is this going to affect Ethiopia and the wolves? we can only begin to guess. There might be impacts on funding. Government might prioritize things differently. We might also struggle in raising enough funds to continue our work in place. So we just live day to day, and we are monitoring the situation very carefully. And I personally hoping for things to get better so I can fly back and spend time in Ethiopia and help build back from where we find ourselves in.
Great. I was off a little bit, so I'm going to throw you one more question. From Sydney, she says, how do you track the wolves and keep track of population numbers?
Okay. Central to the work we do are the wolf monitors. We have dedicated members of staff that spend 20 days a month out in the field, camping and following the wolves with the binoculars and the tablets and collecting all the data. So they have a rather intimate knowledge of each and every one of those packs. Many animals that are trapped for vaccination do have air tags on, so we are able to follow individuals with tags on. These are just plastic tags on the ears, not radio collars. And because these animals are territorial and they live in relatively small home ranges, we have a very, very good understanding of what they do. We have a tally of the reproductive success and so on. So at any given time, or actually we do the summary report once a year. We know how many packs live in each one of these areas and how many animals are there, and we have information on how most of the packs have reproduced. So that allows us to keep very close tabs on the numbers. Don't forget that there are only 500 of them. So we can afford knowing each and every one of those family packs rather well.
Yeah, it's a relatively small number to keep track of, unfortunately, right? Claudio, Jorgelina, I want to thank you so much for being here today. It's really been great to see you in person and get to answer some questions and learn a bit more about the wolves. For everybody watching, we are going to move into a little bit of a 15-minute break, so you can get up, get your lunch, have a glass of wine, whatever suits your fancy, and then we will meet back on the main stage for our COVID panel starting at 1:15 the hour. So we'll look forward to seeing everybody over there. And Claudio, Jorgelina, any final thoughts?
Now I want to say thank you for this opportunity again, and thank you for the people that joined this session. And I hope you keep following our news in the website through WCN and come on board. We really, really appreciate your support.
Likewise, the support we have received through WCN since 2002 when we joined, it has been transformational for us. We couldn't do the work in Ethiopia without your support. And believe us, your dollars go very far in trying to protect these wolves while taking care of the local communities that share the land with them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, a little bit goes a long way. If you're interested, you can pop over to the expo area and check out the booths. When you look at the Ethiopian Wolf Book booth, there's a button you can push to be added to their mailing list. So please head on over there and leave us your name, and we'll make sure that you get involved further and that Claudio and Jorgelina are able to stay in touch with you. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you in about 15 minutes on the main stage.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.